Hey there guys, this is Louis, and if you happen to be curious where to find plastic schoolgirl pussy, you can find such luxury items on JList. There are all kinds of other things on there, but if you need a certain kind of pussy, 2D pussy, 3D pussy, plastic interpretations of 2D pussy, all that's on JList. Now if you're some kind of asshole who says that he doesn't want any kind of pussy, well fine, go over to MpYECw, where you can find some savings on video games, especially console games. I think I might buy this girl-on-girl squirt gun game for the PlayStation 4, although I have to double check that it actually has English subtitles and isn't region locked and all that. I don't think it is. On the plus side, it doesn't have English voice acting, unlike upcoming Atlus games. Is it that hard to not have some talentless goddamn retard pollute the game with their voice? Is it that fucking hard to do, Atlas? Or just let Japanese people do the game. Okay, just let them do it and give me the fucking option for subtitles. Is that difficult of a thing to do? Anyways, be sure to check out JList or MpYECw and buy some shit. Or don't, whatever, Unfortunately with this commentary, I get the feeling that a lot of people are going to be crying about the fact that, oh, you're talking about Overwatch again. I don't want to hear that, but it's whatever. Links will be in the description. So this is Louis, and this is going to be a follow-up commentary of sorts, unscripted, in reference to the last video that I just did where I talked about Overwatch and Idea Guy Mike. This is going to be, hopefully, a less unconstructive commentary than my last one while talking about certain issues that I've brought up where people fundamentally don't understand what I'm talking about. And I'm going to try to do this as clear as possible in explaining what my point is on this and what is not important. So the petty debate that we can have is who is and who is not a villain. There are several characters that I've seen mentioned that are being argued as being villainous. And, outside of Roadhog as a character, I'm not willing to concede any of the others. This debate, that I'm engaging in is petty, and it's besides the point. But I'm just going to say that right now, that the only character that I'm willing to concede is Roadhog. No one else. Let's just take Roadhog. Or, I'll just concede Reaper for the sake of the discussion. With these characters, you then have to explain why Reaper, who got in a battle with Soldier 76 over Overwatch and died as a result, you then have to explain to me why those two characters are fighting alongside one another. Because there is no explanation for that. And you now have to explain why they're fighting against people that would otherwise be allies. So you'd have to explain to me why Reaper, whose one mission it seems is to hunt down remaining members of Overwatch, is fighting alongside Soldier 76, who has the complete and utter opposite role in terms of his story. You have two characters that contradict one another in terms of what their motivations have been laid out, what their actions are at least. You then have to explain to me why they're doing what they're doing in terms of the game itself. So when I say there is no internal logic to the game, that's what I'm talking about. There are clear contradictions of what's happening on screen versus what I'm reading in terms of the lore. That has nothing to do with me being any kind of idiot. This is not any kind of misinterpretation by me, okay? I'm playing the game. I'm reading the lore. They contradict. They don't make sense. The game has no internal logic. That is not my fault. That is the fault of the writers painting themselves into a corner. And that is the fault of a game that has no depth to it. That doesn't mean it's a bad game. It doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it and play with your friends and all the other shit. I never said it was a bad game. It's a decent game. But the fact remains that it lacks any internal logic. There is no purpose for these characters to be fighting, as there is no actual conflict. The conflict that exists in the lore contradicts what you see on the screen. That is a problem. That is the writer's problem. Okay, I never even said that point. Idea Guy said it, and I just pointed it out because it's a fact. We're going to now move on to my actual criticism of the game. And I want to be clear in that I don't want this commentary to be me lecturing you. This isn't about me trying to dress down or rebuke someone that I think is an asshole or anything like that. This is me trying to simply explain, again, something that is not difficult to understand and that you need to understand if you're going to look at this objectively, which is what all I want to have people do. I just want people to understand that Overwatch is not a perfect game. It has serious flaws to it, and one of its biggest flaws is not just its, total lack of internal logic, but the fact remains that there is no defined antagonism. There is no reason for there to be conflict. There's no reason for these characters to be fighting. This is an issue that can be easily corrected, okay? This is not me saying that this game is irredeemable. It's me saying that the writers need to patch this game and include an actual fucking reason for the characters to be doing something. You load up a game that is universally hated. Kane & Lynch 2, Dog Days. That game is hated by many, many people. That game has internal logic. That game has villains, not just, but it has antagonism. It has motivation. It has a reason for characters within the game to be acting. This is not about one game being superior to the other. This is about games actually making sense, actually having internal logic, actually having a motivating factor for why these characters are in conflict. Fundamental things that you need in any fiction. I know that people just want to say that because the game has a function, that's enough. But no, I'm sorry, it's not. In fiction, if you have conflict, you need antagonism. You need motivation. You need a purpose for these characters to be acting in this conflict. You need these things. Talk to any professor of from any university on any given creative writing course. Anything. And ask them if the things that I'm mentioning are necessary or not. And they will tell you that if you want to make any story at all worth reading, you have to have some kind of motivation, some kind of antagonism. You need that, especially in a piece of fiction, a work that has conflict. You need to define it. I'm not willing to say that that fiction does not require these things. When I was taught this at a university, just because it's a game doesn't mean it can shirk the bare minimum of explanation. I'm not conceding that, and I think that you shouldn't either. If you really consider yourself to be a fan of this game, if you really like these games, if you like Blizzard as a developer and publisher, I think, you shouldn't be letting them go on this. They painted themselves into a corner with this fucking game. There is no internal logic, and there is no motivation behind these characters that actually makes sense. There are things defined about these characters that say what they are actually acting upon, what they're doing, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't actually meet what's on the screen. And here's my question for you, for people that disagree with me, okay? What is the point of lore if the game itself contradicts it? What is the point of lore? What's the point of canon if the game is contradicting the fucking lore that's supposed to coincide with the fucking game? What is the point of the lore? I don't understand why people want to give Blizzard a pass on this. There are multiplayer-only games that exist out there that have actual explanations for why people are fighting, for what the factions are, for what the motivations are of the characters that are defined. Even of your protagonist, even if they're unnamed, unvoiced, etc., you're at least part of a faction that has a motivation. There's a reason for the conflict. There's internal logic in the game. And if there is a breach, okay, and this is, and I'll get into some solutions here, okay? I'm not just going to be negative. But there are very good explanations that can be given for why Reaper and Soldier 76 can be fighting on the same side in the game, okay? There can be easily defined reasons for why they're doing that, despite the fact that they're supposed to be mortal enemies, at least when Reaper was quote-unquote alive. There are reasons that can explain that. There could be reasons why Reaper, despite his original motivation or intention of killing Overwatch members, has decided against it. Or that his intentions at the time were not understood. Or that he's had a change of heart, like Hanzo. Hanzo, that was another name given out that he's a villain. When part of his fucking story that's given is him seeking redemption. Here's the thing for you. Villains are not seeking redemption. That's not part of the archetype of a fucking villain, is on a quest seeking redemption. So I'm sorry, I'm not willing to concede it. So I've been rambling, and I think I'll just get to, talking about solutions and, what I think the game needs. And for starters, it needs either an enemy faction, an opposing faction, or just an antagonist. You need to have some kind of antagonism to this game. Okay, it doesn't need to be Kevin Spacey being evil Kevin Spacey. You don't need that. Doesn't mean you can't have evil Kevin Spacey, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have that kind of character. You can have the villain from the antagonist rather from Infamous Second Son, who has intentions which she believes are noble and good, and she's doing evil, pursuing those goals which she believes are good. You can have someone that believes what they're doing is right. You don't necessarily need to have someone that is a psychopath or evil. It doesn't even need to be a single person. It can be a faction. But you need to introduce antagonism. You need to introduce something that explains the conflict. There is no conflict without antagonism. You need some reason for there to be fighting. So that's fucking bedrock. That's needed, period. Beyond that, you need some purpose for the characters that are teaming up to be teaming up. You need there to be a reason why these characters are involving themselves. They need some kind of motivation. It can be very easy to explain. You already have all this fucking lore. You just need to fucking introduce it to the game. And have it be somewhat consistent. That's all you need. It doesn't need to make perfect sense, but it just needs to be there. In its current form, it's just total absence. Or, that's not even correct. It's not just total absence. It contradicts the fucking lore. So I don't know what you want me to do about it. It contradicts the lore. I didn't write this shit. My solution is you actually need to give some kind of explanation for why the characters who, based on the lore, should be fighting against one another. But they're not in the game. They're fighting alongside one another when it doesn't make any sense. And here's the thing, okay? And I mentioned the game before, but it's a good explanation, and it can easily work. And it was Kane and Lynch 2 Dog Days, and it was one of the elements of the multiplayer that I liked, which was Fragile Alliance, where you have a group of people that don't trust and one another, and are seeking their own self-interest. And that group, out of pursuing their own self-interest, join together because they know, given the current circumstances, that they're better off together than they would be separately. That's easy to explain. And so you can have people like Roadhog and Reaper and Soldier 76 and, fucking Symmetra and everyone else. You can have them in a tense, fragile alliance where they're not comfortable working with one another. That's an easy explanation to give with some 2 lines of fucking dialogue. 2 lines. Reaper says something to fucking Soldier 76 saying, "Fuck you, cunt." Soldier 76 says, "Well, we both don't like the situation, but we both got to work together. You're just going to have to get past your shit." Boom! Consistency! Boom! Internal logic. The game starts making fucking sense. That fucking easy. Again, I'm using the lore to explain something. I'm using what's there to read to explain what could be on the screen, but it isn't. That's not my fault. My ideal in this, okay, is to introduce the same amount or something close to it in terms of Faction B, who are doing what they're doing for their own reasons, that have their own motivations, but are deciding to join Faction B and fighting against Faction A, which is all these characters, which you can call Overwatch. So introduce the anti-Overwatch to fight Overwatch. That way, you have 1, internal logic, 2, a reason for these characters to be fighting with one another, retaining internal logic and the lore, 3, a reason for conflict and fighting, 4, more content in a game severely lacking it, and 5, characters who are hopefully actual villains. Not this grimdark bullshit. Actual fucking villains. That's what I want. That's what I desire for Overwatch. I want villains. I want actual villains. I don't want fucking corny shit characters, of which I'm talking about just a very narrow few of who I'm describing there. I have no problem with other characters that are good guys. I have no problem with Mercy or even Soldier 76. I find him boring as fuck. I got no problem with Soldier 76. I got no problem with McCree, other than he's a ripoff of, you know, the Dollars trilogy. I got no problem with this game. I got no problem other than the fact that it makes no fucking sense and that it lacks content. And you could easily introduce an enemy faction and add a ton of content to this game and make it a solid fucking game, in my opinion. Because this shit that I'm talking about is what prevents it from being a solid game. It's a decent game. I've heard people say, no, it's a bad game and it's a mediocre game. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's a decent game. I think it's better than Titanfall, which somebody name-dropped. Oh, actually, I name-dropped, didn't I? No, someone else name-dropped it. Someone else name-dropped Titanfall. I think it's a better game than Titanfall. And, you know, it could be better. But it seems like I'm the only fucking guy that's asking for it to be better. Everyone else is like, no, it's perfect. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with this fucking game. And it's like, no, there clearly is. There is clearly problems with this fucking game. And it could be better. And I have full confidence in the developers to actually come out. They fucking wrote the lore. Okay? It makes sense on paper. Implement it in the goddamn game. Introduce some characters to be antagonists, to be villainous, to represent Faction B, so that all these characters can join Faction A and this game can make fucking sense. Then it can actually qualify for a lot of these Game of the Year fucking awards and shit. Because I don't consider this to be a Game of the Year kind of game. Again, I'm not saying it's a bad game, but I don't think it qualifies for that category. You know, I will never nominate a game for that kind of category where it has no internal logic, where its own lore contradicts what's on the fucking screen. That's not Game of the Year contender. That's bad writing contender. That's, oh shit, we didn't realize what we were doing when we wrote this shit, and then fucking published the game. That's what it is. It's not Game of the Year contender. It has good gameplay. It has some characters are good. It has a lot of aesthetic stuff to it that's nice. I don't really like the microtransactions, and for whatever reason, it seems to be getting a fucking free pass on that. Although the other day, it's like that's one of the things. Oh, fucking microtransactions! Then Overwatch comes out, and no one's fucking talking about microtransactions anymore. I noticed that. Be objective when talking about this shit. Alright? I want people to fucking come back. You know, you got some kind of rebuttal to what I'm saying here? Not just, oh, this person's not a villain. Tell me what the antagonism is in this game. Explain to me how I'm wrong about the internal logic of this game. Tell me how I'm wrong. Because I can quote you their own bios. I can quote you the lore and explain to you how you're wrong from the writers themselves. So explain to me. Explain to me how I don't know what I'm talking about here and how this game's perfect. What are they doing over there at Blizzard? This game should have 100 maps, 100 modes, 100 characters, and it should be fucking free. There should be no fucking microtransactions in this game. Are you kidding me? You know, where is the criticism of this fucking game? The actual criticism from people that play and don't have a problem with the actual gameplay in that, but are looking at it and saying, listen, this shit is not perfect, and it could be a hell of a lot better. Where is the fucking criticism of this game? You know, I just see people fucking linking me fan art and beating their dicks off to that bullshit when there's serious flaws with this fucking game that no one's talking about. Maybe I'm just taking it too seriously, you know? Maybe I'm now the one overthinking this, but fuck, man, you know? I don't like reading all these fucking comments trying to come across like I'm wrong when they're not even engaging in my argument whatsoever. But I've been talking for like 20 minutes. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you for listening.